Kadosh, Boker Or, Masechet Bava Kamma, Daf Yudaled Amud Aleph, 14a1. Says the Gemara, Yihachi. If so, which means if we're talking about now that the borrower does not accept upon himself achrayut, the guarantee, meaning the responsibility of the nezek of the shore, meaning I'm only borrowing the shore, but I'm not actually coming and I'm not actually accepting upon myself the responsibility to watch over the shore. So therefore, let's see the Seifa. The Seifa says, Nifretza balayla, if the wall was broken during the nighttime, or shepartsua listim, or listim come and they break it. Yatzta ve'zika, they go out and they damage, right? Patur, it's going to be patur. Ha bayom, but if it's going to be done during the daytime, it's going to be chayav. But why? According to what you just told me, he didn't accept upon himself the responsibility of damages. So if he didn't accept upon himself the responsibility of damages, what do I care that it was broken during the nighttime or partsua listim, even during the daytime? I didn't accept myself damages. So says the Gemara, Hachi Kamma, this is what it means to say. In kibel alav shmirat nezakav chayav, if he's going to accept upon himself the shmirat nezakav, then he's going to be chayav. No. So he says, only if you do accept upon yourself the damages, you're going to be chayav if it happened during the daytime. But if it happened during the nighttime, you're going to be patur. So says the Gemara, any is it so? V'atani Rav Yosef comes and he taught, chatzar hashutafim v'pundak. When we're talking about now, chatzar hashutafim, or the pundak, chayav bahen al Hashem v'al regel. When you come and you say that you have a chatzer of shutafim, right? Whether it's talking about partners or a pundak, which is an inn, which means that everybody in the inn has the right to be there. Chayav bahen al Hashem, you're going to be chayav on Hashem v'regel. Tiyufta Rabbi Lazar. So this goes according to Rabbi Lazar. Because Rabbi Lazar said that chatzar shutafim, you're going to be patur on Hashem v'regel. Here you just said you're going to be chayav on Hashem v'regel. Remember, shen just means whatever they're eating, and regel is what he kicks with when he's walking, right? Not the kick. His kicking is bita, something different. Is a tolodah. Okay, but we're talking about mamash just like the walking, right? You're just trampling upon something. Okay, so Rabbi Lazar comes and he says, "V'tizbar is logical. Matnita milo pliga, right? Is our Braita not arguing on this?" He says, "Vatanya, we learned in a Braita, arba'a kelalot. There are 4 general rules that Rabbi Shimon Lazar used to say in Nezikin. Kol sheu reshut lanizak v'lo lamazik chayav b'kol. If it's going to be a reshut for the nizak and not for the mazik, he's obligated the entire nezek. Meaning this entire concept of chetzi nezek does not apply if he goes in my property. Because if he goes in my property, what are you doing in my property? So if you come in my property and you damage, you're going to be obligated to pay the nezek shalem, not chetzi nezek, right? The entire thing. That's halakha number 1, klal number 1, general rule number 1, right? Even for a time. Klal number 2, mazik velon lanizak. If it's going to be a place where it's only for the damager and not the damagee, patur mikol, he's patur. If you come into my property and your animal damages my property, even if he's a tam, he pays nezek shalem. That's halakha number 1. Halakha number 2, what happens if my ox damages his ox? I'm patur from everything. Why? What are you doing in my property? Patur mikol, exempt from everything. Number 3, lazeh v'lazeh. What happens if it's a partnership? You go on chatzar hashutafim v'bika. Patur bal nezek shem v'regel. You're going to be patur on shem v'regel. But on negicha, negifa, neshicha, revitza, beita, which is keren, atam is going to be mishalem chatzi nezek and 1 nezek shalem, which means anything which is shem v'regel, you're patur. Right? Why? Because you both had the reshut to be there. So there's no problem. But, right, if it's going to be that he gored or he did a damage, a proactive damage, whether it's the goring, pushing, biting, kicking, all these other things, plumping upon it, like jumping on top of it or things like that, a tam is going to be mishalem chatzi nezek, and muad is going to be mishalem nezek shalem. Lo lazeh v'lo lazeh, it's not going to be for neither. For example, chatzer shalem. What happens if the person's ox goes into another property and it damages another person's ox? Neither ox had the reshut to be there. Meaning the ox of the damager and the ox of the damagee shouldn't have been there. But they both wandered into there and they're there. What happens now? So he says over here, they're both going to be chayav on shem v'regel. Why are they going to be chayav on shem v'regel? Because obviously they weren't supposed to be there. But on negicha, neshicha, negifa, revitza, beita, the same halakha. Tam is going to pay chatzi nezek, and Muad is going to pay nezek shalem. Ktani mihat. However, we did learn though. Chatzer hashutfim v'abika patur ba al Hashem v'alaregel. So this is a proof to the Elazar that if it's going to be a chatzer, which is a, then we should turn on the AC, right? If it's going to be a chatzer, which is going to be a what's it called, right? He comes and he says, right? He comes and he says, if it's going to be a chatzer, right? He comes and he says, if it's going to be a chatzer, right, which belongs to both of them, so you're going to be patur on Hashem v'regel. So says the Gemara, Kasha Adadi. This is going to be a question on both of them. Kitanya hi. So with the brighter answers, when we were talking about we're talking about a chatzer which is miyuchedet for both of the shutafim, ben lepirot ben shvarim, whether for fruits or for shvarim. The ahid of Yosef, and this is of Yosef, was someone in the brighter. It's chatzer miyuchedet lepirot ve'enem miyuchedet shvarim. Telagabe shen havyaleh chatzer anizak, which means like this: what happens if it's a chatzer shutafim, but not that we could both use it for whatever we want? It's only for fruits, meaning we're partners. But I never told you could bring your dogs in there, or your ox in there, or things like that. You could only have it for fruits. So we're both partners in the field for the fruits, but not in the actual for the animals. So that's why he's saying it's not miyuchedet for shvarim, but it's miyuchedet for both of them. So he says in the first case, he was talking about that it's miyuchad for also the shvarim, and therefore, since it's going to be miyuchad for both the shvarim, it's going to be patur on shem v'regel. But the other case of Rav Yosef, it's only for fruits. So when you bring in your ox, you're chayav on shem v'regel. What do you bring your ox here for? You're right, you're partner with me, but for the fruits, who's bringing the ox in here? What are you doing? That can be diktani hacha, and you could also actually deduce it because he said a pundak. Diktani hatam de bika. We said a pundak. A pundak is that you don't bring into a hotel oxen. You leave the oxen outside. And the other one was a bika. A bika, stand up, right? A bika is a valley. A valley is where you have animals. Yeah? 100%. Shema mina. That's what we actually learned from here. Okay? Fine. Mat kifla Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera comes and he says the following. Right? He comes and he says like this. Says Rabbi Zera, Kevan di miyuchedet. Right? He comes and he says, since it's going to be miyuchedet, leperot, habayinu ubiste biste acher, ubier biste acher veleka. 1 second. If you're going to tell me now that it's miyuchedet for perot, why in the world does he have to pay on shem v'regel? It says ubier biste acher. It has to be in another person's field. This is his field as well. You're right. It's not designated for the ox, but it's also his field. So when he's going to be chayav, it has to be that he's damaging somebody else's field, not his field. And here he's not. So says the Gemara, Abaye says, no, since it's not miyuchad for oxen, it's considered sedeh acher. Because you have no rights to bring your ox here. So this is somebody else's field. This is not your field. So Amaleh Ravacha Medifti Ravina Lema Midematznita Lo Pliges, for the fact that in the bright that you're going to say that there's no argument. Amorai Nami Lo Pliges. So the Amoraim also they're not arguing. So Amaleh comes and he says, in your rights. Right? Really, Be'emet, you could say that Rav Chastan and Rabbi Elazar are talking about this case, which they're not arguing. If you are going to say that they're going to argue, they're arguing on the question of Rabbi Zera and the answer of Abaye, which means when you have a chatzer which is miyuchedet, a field which is miyuchad to two different partners to put fruits, but it's not for the shores, Rav Chastan comes and he says, since he has no permission to bring in his shore, it's considered sedeh acher. And you're going to be chayav on shem v'regel. Rabbi Elazar holds like Rabbi Zera that since he has permission to put his fruits there, it's not considered sedeh acher, so he's patur. So therefore, he comes and he says, but if it's 100% somebody else's thing, for sure he's going to be patur for shem v'regel. Okay, next, gufa. Arba'a klalot, hayar b'shimon Elazar men nizikin. There are 4 general rules that we said in nizikin. Kol shu reshut anizak v'lo mazik. If it's going to be the reshut of the damagee, but not the damager, he's going to be chayav on everything. Ala kol lo katani. He doesn't say ala kol. It doesn't say on everything. Chayav bakol. It says chayav in everything. Bekul nezek in kol nezek. Who is this? Rabbi Tarfoni. Tamar meshune keren v'chatzer anizak nezek shalem v'shalem. Which means, according to the shita of Rabbi Tarfon, when he's going to damage in the property of the damagee, he has to pay nezek shalem. Even on a tam, he has to pay nezek shalem. That's the shita of Rabbi Tarfon. So says the Gemara, a Masechet. Let's see the Seifa. It says lo lazeh v'lo lazeh. If it's not going to be belonging to either or, for example, chatzer, which is not belonging to any of them, he's going to be chayav on shem v'regel. What does it mean lo lezeh v'lo lezeh? If you're going to tell me lo lezeh v'lo lezeh klal, but it belongs to somebody else, it's not bisei acher. Ela pshita, but rather lo lezeh v'lo lezeh ela leechad, but only one of them. And the Seifa says the tam is going to be mishlem chatzi nezek. What mishlem nezek shalem? So obviously this comes according to Rabbanan that they say meshune keren b'chaser nizach chatzi nezek udu mishalem. Reisha Rabbi Tarfon v'Seifa Rabbanan. He says I don't understand. The Reisha is Rabbi Tarfon, and the Seifa is going to be Rabbanan. How does that make sense? Answers the Gemara, yes. The Elmaleh Shmuel Rav Yehuda was a Shmuel said to Rav Yehuda, Shinin a sharp one. Shevok matniti v'ta batrai. Leave the Mishnah, right, and come after me. The Reisha is the Rabbi Tarfon, right, and the Seifa is Rabbanan, and therefore that's how we're going to explain our Braita as well. So the Maaseh Shmuel comes and he says that of the Mishnah that is opposite. The Reisha of the Mishnah is like going to be like Chachamim, and the Seifa is like going to be like Rabbi Tarfon. Ravina comes and he says, in the name of Rama, Kula Rabbi Tarfon, the entire thing is going to be Rabbi Tarfon. Umay, what does it mean now? Lo lezev lo lezeh, that it's not for one of them. Lo lezev lo lezeh leperot el al dichad, velezeh velezeh leshvarim. Meaning, only one of them can have fruits here, but both of them can have ox here. So to do a shen, it's chaser anizak, but to do a keren, it's reshut rabim. It belongs to both of them. They're both allowed to bring ox in here. So therefore, it's like reshut rabim. So says the Gemara, so why are you saying that there's 4 general rules? It's 3. Because there was no chidush in this klal, right? This klal did not teach us anything new. It was just a continuation of what we mentioned before. So Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak said Nachman Yitzchak Yudalad Amubet Shlosha Klalot be'arba mekumot. You're right. There's only 3 general rules in 4 different places. There's the Mishnah on Yudalad Amubet 14b. Says the Mishnah, Shum Kesef. Right? When we're going to come and we're talking about the shum, shuma is an evaluation of money. Shaveh kesef, right? Or paying shaveh kesef b'fnei bedin. Ve'al pi adin b'nei chorin u'bnei brit, v'anashim bichlal hanezek, right? V'anizak v'mazik b'tashlumim. So basically this. In these mishnayot, we're going to talk about when is a person chayav l'shalem nizke mamono. Now we're going to say a few other different types of halachot, which we're going to speak about each one, because if you read the Mishnah, it doesn't really make sense, right? You say shum, right? We're talking about shum kesef, which is shuma, an evaluation. Shaveh kesef, which is basically something worth money, but it's not really money, right? In front of a bedin, and it has to be through a dut of people which are bnei chorin and bnei brit. Then it says women are also bichlal dine nezek. So if somebody damages a woman or a woman's property, obviously they're obligated to pay. The mazik, he's going to take both of them chelik and tashlumin. So let's start analyzing the Mishnah. Again, many times the Mishnah sounds very interesting, and now we have to explain the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says like this: My shum kesef. What does it mean shum kesef? So Amar Rav Yehuda says shum zeh. Right, when we're going to evaluate nizakim, lo ye'ela bekesef. We have to evaluate it with money. Okay, and he has to pay it with money. So Tanina haditanu Rabbanan parash izika talit. What happens if a para comes, right, and he comes? What happens if he comes and he's going to damage a talit? Talit sheizika para. Or, right, he comes and he says, or talit sheizika para. En omrim, I'm not going to say, tetze para betalit, right, that you're going to go out, right? V'talit bepara. Okay, ela shaminota b'damim, but we're going to evaluate it, which means one more time. What was the case? You have a para, it damages a talit. Or a talit that damages a para in the Reshut Rabin. So, for example, the para was going by and it slipped on a guy's talit and he went flying and it got damaged. So either the para damages the talit, it broke the person's talit, or the talit damaged the para. We're not going to say switch, given the para. We don't do that. Rather what? Or the talit and the para. We evaluate how much is the money and let him pay money. Right? We don't just come and say, okay, just take the para. No. That's the way it is. Shaveh kesef. We're talking about now shaveh kesef. We learned in the Braita. Shaveh kesef melamed shem bedin niskakin ela lenechasim sheyesh lahem achrayut. It comes to teach you that bedin are not going to come and pay back only in nechasim that they have achrayut. Aval in kadam nizak betafas netaltalim bedin govin mehen. So that was until now the shum kesef. So shum kesef means you evaluate money and you have to pay money. We don't start talking about switching things because of the damages. Not because you come and you damage something, I'm going to take the phone. No. How much is the damage? Pay up money. That's shum kesef. What is shaveh kesef? We learned, what happens if you have shaveh kesef? They're only going to come, they're going to come and talk about shaveh kesef to a property that has a achrayut. But If somebody comes and he grabs metaltali, Bedin are going to collect it. The nizak him. You're going to collect it. The Gemara is going to explain what does that mean. So Amar more says, Shaveh kesef lamed shem bedin nizkakim nechazim shish lem achrayut. My mashma. What does that mean? So he comes and he says, Amar Rabbi Barula, davar shaveh kol kesef, something which is worth all kesef. Meaning, what is that? Davar she'lo ona'ah, something that does not have ona'ah. Okay, ona'ah is when you charge more than a sixth of the value. So avadim ushtarot nami en lehem ona'ah. So what? Avadim and shtarot, they also don't have ona'ah. And Amar Rabbi Ula says, Rabbi Ula, what is shaveh kesef? Davar nikneh bekesef, which is karka. So he says, Avadim ushtarot nami nikrim bekesef. He says, what? Avadim ushtarot also you buy with kesef. So he says, and still the Braita is talking about shaveh kesef. So he says, Elam Ravashi shaveh kesef lo kesef. V'ani kulu kesef. All these things that we mentioned are metaltalim, right? Whether avadim ushfachot and things like that, they're kesef. So everything which is metaltel is kilu, it's kesef in itself, because they could come and they could be ma'aviroto from one city to another city. So Rami le Rav Yehuda bar Chanyan le Rav Huna berei de Rav Yoshua. So ask Rav Yehuda bar Chanyan to Rav Huna bar Yoshua. Tana, we learned in the Braita, shaveh kesef lo mention bedin nizkakim and echasishushu. So the bedin are not going to come and they're not going to pay back unless it's going to be from nechasim that have achrayut, which is karka. Meaning the betin will never come and take your metaltal and pay it back. Only karka. So says the Gemara Vatanya Yashiv. Says Larabot Shaveh Kesef. Afilu Subin. It says 1 second, but it says Yashiv. Yashiv means even Subin, even brand, which means even metaltali. So answers the Gemara. What are we talking about? Biyatme. We're talking about, right? We're talking about from the Yitomim. Right? What does that mean from the Yitomim? He comes and he says, right? We're talking about from the Yitomim. Orphans, yes. Which means the Mazik died. And now the Nizak is asking to collect from the properties of the Mazik from the Yitomim. So the Braita says if the father left them karka, he could collect from the karka. From the metaltalin, they cannot collect. Right? Because since they belong to Yitomim, they're never meshubad to Balchov. Remember, the Yitomim have a special protection that the metaltalin, the rule objects of their father, can never be collected as a Balchov for a debt. Okay? So ask the Gemara, if we're talking about Yitomim, let's see the Seifa. In Kadam Nizak, what happens if he came and he grabbed the metaltalin? Betin, they do collect it from him. If we're talking about Yitomim, so why are Betin going to collect it? You just said that they don't take it. Meaning, let's say the guy comes and he grabbed the metaltalin. You don't let them keep it. It's Yitomim. Yitomim, you have to give it back. So answers the Gemara like Rava, right? In the name of Rav Nachman, that he says, Shetafas Mechaim, he grabbed it from the guy when he was still alive, right? And then the guy died, right? Meaning the father was still alive, and that's when they grabbed the metaltalin. So Achanam is 2 years, Shetafas Mechaim, and then the guy died. So that's why they're able to keep it. Okay? Next, you do it in front of a bedin, bifnei bedin. What does it mean, bifnei bedin? We're coming to exclude somebody that sells his properties and then he comes to bedin, which means bedin are not going to pay back from the lekuchot for the karkol that he already sold because it was done not in front of a bedin, which means if it's not going to be kayamim birshuto b'shal shu omer ledin, meaning that we're only going to take it at the time that he comes to bedin. So when he comes to bedin, I have to see what's up. If he already sold it and he has nothing left, there's nothing left. Why? Because he already sold it. Shema mina, we learn from here. Laval machade chasav achal bedin, and bedin govilume. Says, I don't understand you. Imagine right now, you're going to borrow money. Now you have properties, and that's why he actually came and he lent you the money. Now you sell all your properties, and now you come to bedin. The bedin are not going to collect it. How does that make sense? Ella, but rather, prat bedin shelo diotot. We're talking about bedin of hediotot, which is basically not of knasot. Remember, there was differences in bedins. There's a bedin which is of knasot, which means that it's a hierarchy of bedin. They're professionals, like mamash, like they're the highest level. And then there's regular bedin. So there's 2 different bedins. Okay? Al pi edim, the next 2 dots. We said that it has to be done through witnesses. Prat modeh beknas. We're talking about something that is modeh beknas. Modeh beknas means that you admit to a penalty. And then the edim came. Shu patur. Hani chalamandamar. This is good according to the mandamar that says modeh beknas, and afterwards by edim come, you're going to be patur. But according to the mandamar that says modeh beknas, and afterwards by edim, you're going to be chayav. Michael, what are you going to tell me? So he says, Seifa, it's strichli, he needs it for the Seifa. Why? What we're talking about the Seifa? The Seifa is talking about Bnei Chorin u'Bnei Brit. Bnei Chorin is coming to exclude Avadim, and Bnei Brit is going to come to exclude Oved Kochavim, and you still need it. The Eved, because the Eved does not have Yachas of his father. Remember, a slave has no Yachas of his father. He always belongs to the mother, and that's why when you let free the father, the slave still stays. this Eved that was born still stays with the master. Yes, Aval Nochri, but a Goy, he does have Yachas after his father. Elmaleh, I would say no. The Yashmin and Nochri, I only told you about the Goy because he's not Shayach b'mitzvot. But an Eved is Shayach b'mitzvot, Elmaleh. So that's why Tzricha, that's why you need both of the cases.